Today we're covering side control defense. If you've been stuck in bottom side control or just really don't know what to do, this video is for you. Let's dive in. With today's topic being side control, we're going to cover some of my favorite ways to address this position when we're stuck on bottom, whether that's getting back to guard, sweeping our opponent, or submitting our opponent. So first up, let's talk about getting back to our guard. Where a lot of people mess up being stuck in bottom side control is that they try to push their opponent away. This is never going to work. And I feel pretty confident using the word never, even though that's not a word I will often use. And that's just because it doesn't really matter how strong you are. The angle, the leverage is a little bit off. You're never going to be able to push someone far enough away to actually effectively be able to escape, especially if you're rolling with someone who knows what they're doing. So instead, what we want to do is set our frames. We're using our bone alignment to do the work that our muscles normally would. And if we use our bone alignment when we set our frames, we're not wasting any energy. This part's very important. So as you can see here, I will set my frames into his hips and to his neck. In this example, you can see that I'm setting my upper arm and almost placing my elbow into his hip. All I have to do is keep my upper arm or my elbow pointed at his hip, and it'll be very difficult, almost impossible for him to collapse that frame to get close to me. I'm also doing the same thing on his chin, jaw, neck area. I can utilize my top frame on his neck to push his face away, bending his spine and making his life a little bit uncomfortable in this position. From here, instead of trying to push him away from me, I'm going to walk my hips away from him. This is a concept that you will see populate all over Jiu Jitsu, where moving yourself away will be a bit easier than trying to push your opponent away from you. It's often so much easier just to move yourself. So I'm going to walk my hips away from him, creating a gap. I will then swing my lower leg or shin area across his waist, creating a knee shield. As you can see, I'm not necessarily jumping my legs off the ground to get myself into position. What I'm doing is I'm using my abs to curl my legs forward, also utilizing my hooks or my frames that I've established on his body to help curl myself in as well. Once I have this knee shield established, I can then create some space and work back to putting this opponent in my guard. And I think that most white belts would agree that you'd rather have your opponent in your guard than crushing you in side control. As long as you can effectively maintain that distance with your frames while also getting your knee shield across his waist, this can be a very effective response to side control and is definitely worth drilling it. And I just want to take a quick break to give my sponsors, X Martial, a shout out. Not only does X Martial have the highest quality no-gi gear for adults and kids on the market, they also provide workout equipment and training tools, everything from resistance bands to grip work to abdominal work. You name it, they got it. On top of all that, they also have the X Martial Charity Initiative, where they help bullied or underprivileged people get help with their training fees and free gear. You're not gonna find a higher quality company out there. So if you wanna look as good as me and probably even better, get over to xmartial.com, use my code IRONWILL to save yourself some money, and look good while you sharpen your skills. All right, well, I think that covers it. Let's get back to the video. Next up, one of my favorite sweeps while stuck in bottom side control. And this one is almost silly because it's so effective, yet so simple. As you can see here, I set my first frame into his hip. From here, I will set my other frame or my top frame against his neck, but instead of keeping it here, what I will do is I will rotate my arm over and on top of his head and curl his head and face down into my ribs. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm putting a bend in his spine. Now you have to remember that we as human beings are very strong. We have a straight spine. This is why we deadlift with a straight spine. We squat with a straight spine. We need that alignment to have maximum strength. And anytime you can put a bend or a twist in someone's spine in Jiu Jitsu, you should notice that their overall strength will diminish. This is a concept that I would encourage you to focus on because it's all over the place. So as I curl his head down, I am putting a bend in his spine. What I then do is I'm going to bridge and roll over my shoulder. Now, where most people make the mistake in this move is if you can picture yourself like a clock, your head being 12 o'clock, your feet being 6, most people try to bridge either to 3 or 9 o'clock, which would be directly 90 degrees to the left or 90 degrees to the right. This is incorrect. You want to bridge at an angle. You want to bridge over your shoulder. So if you could think 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And if you're doing this correctly, it shouldn't really take that much strength, effort, or energy, and you're gonna end up sweeping your opponent and ending up on top of them inside control with them stuck under you in bottom side control. One important aspect to have this sweep work is that you want them to be overly committed to one side. So if they're in side control and their weight is set back and away from you, this is gonna be really hard to hit because they're not overcommitted to the wrong side. Now, one way I like to get my opponent to overcommit to that one side if they aren't taking the bait right away is I will bridge into them. And if they don't respect the bridge, there's a good chance that they could fall over and I'll end up on top anyways. But if they do respect the bridge, they'll push back into me. I can drop back down to my back. And as we settle back into the original position with him pushing into me, when my back is flat, it's very easy to hit this sweep because of his kinetic energy. His weight is moving forward in the direction that I want it to complete the sweep. So this is also worth your time in drilling it. If you haven't tried this one, try it. It works on everyone, right? As long as you can bend the spine by pulling the head down and you can get them to overcommit to the side that you want to sweep on, this will work. And it's worked for me countless times, not only in the training room, but in tournaments as well. So drill it. I think you'll really like it. Last but certainly not least, hitting a triangle from bottom side control. Now, I'll never forget when this happened to me for the first time, and it immediately changed the safety I felt in being in top side control. I don't know if the guy even watches my YouTube videos, but his name's Paul. His nickname at Orwell Gracie was the Milkman. And very skilled guy, very strong, very fast, very good at Jiu Jitsu, who's one of my favorite guys to roll with over there. And he hit this on me. And again, it was just one of those situations where you have to laugh because it's so good, it just works. So let's talk about the movements here. As you can see, I'm in bottom side control. I set my frames. Now, what I want to do is I want to roll to the direction that his head is pointed. And as I roll, I'm going to hook that outside arm. In doing this, I will force his body forward. If he doesn't respect this movement, he'll end up rolling and I'm either going to get out of side control or I could potentially even end up on top of him. But if he does respect it, and this is normally what happens, he will post with his other hand. In posting with that hand, he presents you an opportunity. So as you can see in this example, I will grab his wrist and I will put my outside leg or my shin area into the crook of his elbow. In doing this, I am now pulling pressure with my hand and applying pressure through his elbow with my shin. I have effectively trapped this arm. Now, I will take my inside leg, windshield wiper my lower leg over top of his tricep that's trapped, and I will use this to pull his arm in between my legs where I can then trap it effectively by crossing my ankles. From here, all I really have to do is post my hand on his head or the side of his face and push his body down mine. In doing this, I'm putting his body into a position where I can lock up a triangle. As you can see here, my outside leg wraps over his head, essentially putting my hamstring on his neck. From there, that leg will drop down. I'm curling my heel in so that I can take my other leg, my inside leg, and wrap that over my shoelace area of my foot. Once I'm here, all I have to do is curl both my legs in, collapse my knees together, and I should get the tap. Now, if you have an opponent who is harder to tap with triangles, especially in this position, you should also be in a nice position to hit a straight arm lock. All you need to do is establish a gable grip over the notch of his elbow, start to perform a sit-up, which will create a gap between his arm and your chest, and then pull both of your hands through his elbow. If you don't sit up, there will be no gap to pull his elbow into. You'll essentially be pulling his arm into your chest or stomach area. One of my favorite things I like to do is if I end up having to use the arm lock, I'm still squeezing the triangle at the same time. It's almost like a double trouble type scenario. He's in 2 submissions at once, and I'm giving him the option either tap to the triangle or tap to the arm lock. Once I learned this one for myself, it really changed my game. Now, the people that roll with me constantly and have felt this from me, they address side control with me much differently because it's not really a safe position anymore. A lot of people feel the side control is safe, and it's only safe if your opponent doesn't know how to attack you from bottom side control. So you put this one in your back pocket, drill it, drill it, drill it. Obviously, be aware that when you first learn it, you're probably not going to be that effective with it, but give it time, be patient, and eventually you'll start catching people with this one. Guys, if you have any techniques from bottom side control that you prefer to get yourself out or to submit your opponents, drop them in the comments. I always read through all of those. And not only do I get to learn from you guys, but everyone else who's in the comments gets to learn from you guys as well. So I always appreciate the knowledge you guys share. And with that, you know how we like to end them. Sometimes backwards, always forwards. I'll see you in the next one.